Everyone, welcome to the October meeting of Licensing and Occupations. Officially call the meeting to order. Before we get into official business, I'd like to turn the floor over to Senator Thayer. Talk about Senator Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Senate and the General Assembly in the Commonwealth of Kentucky suffered a great loss this week when we heard the unfortunate news of the passing of Senator Johnny Lloyd Turner. It came to a shock to all of us because we had heard that he was actually doing better. He was a man of the mountains who loved this Commonwealth and stood up for his people, but also took the broad view about taking tough votes that were good for the entire Commonwealth. I'm going to miss him terribly. And I know everybody on this committee joins me in sending our thoughts and prayers and condolences to his family. And if it's in order, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask for a moment of silence in honor of our colleague, our fallen colleague, Senator Johnny Lloyd Turner.
Absolutely. Everyone join me in a moment of silence. Our hearts and prayers are with his family, and it's a great loss for them and the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And thank you, Senator Thayer. All right, let's move on to approval of the meeting minutes from September 26.
Motion to approve the minutes.
We have a motion. Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And we need to go back and do the roll call. So, Madam Clerk, if you please call the roll.
Senator Adams. Senator Douglas. Senator Harper Angel. Senator Higdon. Senator Howe. Senator Mays Bledsoe. Senator McDaniel. Senator Nemus.
Present.
Senator Thayer.
Here.
Senator Thomas. Representative Banta. Present. Representative Bratcher. Representative Callaway.
Present.
Representative Kleins. Here. Representative Dixon.
Here.
Representative Pfister.
Here.
Representative Flannery.
Here.
Representative Gentry.
Here.
Representative Heverin.
Present.
Representative Herron.
Here.
Representative Huff.
Here.
Representative Jackson.
Present.
Representative Kulkarni.
Present.
Representative Meredith. Representative Neighbors.
Here.
Representative Palumbo.
Here.
Representative Pratt.
Present.
Representative Smith.
Here.
Representative Timoney.
Here.
Co-Chair Schickel. Chairman Cook.
Here. We have a quorum. Representative Kleins, I believe you have a guest you want to recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to recognize a very special guest today, one of our county commissioners from Campbell County, Mr. Jeff Basiker. Welcome. Glad to have you.
All right, welcome. All right, let's get started with praxis testing, and Representative Kim Banta, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, committee, for allowing me to talk to you about this. This is a praxis test. Is the test that teachers take, people who want to be teachers take after they have completed 4 years at an accredited university. Currently, you have to have a 2.7 and pass the praxis. I am proposing that we make the praxis optional to districts so that if a district wants to keep the praxis as part of its hiring, they can absolutely do that. But I would like to make it optional so that we don't have to have it. JCPS is on score, as we learned in the JCPS task force, to lose about 127 teachers at the end of 5 years of taking the praxis. I guess my question would be why someone that works with preschoolers and kindergartners need Algebra 1 and Algebra 2. So, you're doing colors and stuff like that. But maybe kids got smarter since I've had mine. I'm not sure. But states have eliminated the praxis completely. Arizona, Florida, Illinois, Michigan, and New Jersey most recently. Praxis scores range in price. You start out at $90, and then for various sections, You have like $120 for middle school. If you want to teach, especially in mathematics, it's another $120. It can get pretty pricey. And we do have some teachers that are, for example, teaching science, and they can't pass the English part of the praxis. So I don't know if you guys have heard, we have a teacher shortage. So my argument is that this praxis does not make you a good teacher. What makes you a good teacher is your college education and then strong mentorship after you leave and you go into a classroom. That's what makes a good teacher. That test has nothing to do with it. The NEA also claims that it is culturally biased. So we are eliminating a portion of, we're not getting diversity in our teaching because we're giving them a test that does not even apply to them. So with that, I will take any questions.
Okay, do we have any questions for Representative Banta? Questions or comments? Representative Klons.
Yeah, I'm all in favor, Representative. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm all in favor of that. I taught for 5 years. Went to the University of Cincinnati to get my master's in educational administration, and then all of a sudden I need to take this test. And I went on to a 28-year career in education, and that test didn't do anything to help me. So,
No, but it helps the bottom line of a test
yes,
organization.
I certainly would support it. Thank you, Representative Vanna.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Okay, let's move to physical therapist. I'm going to come forward. As you move forward and you get up there, just make sure your green light is on. And then if we could go across the table, looks like there's 4 of you coming forward. If you just go across and introduce yourselves for the record.
I'll go ahead and start. Thank you, committee members, for having us. My name is Stephen Curley. I'm the Executive Director for the Kentucky Board of Physical Therapy.
My name is Dr. Casey Saxon. I'm a physical therapist in Kentucky and retired Army physical therapist.
Dr. Avery Schroyer, owner of a clinic in Lexington, Kentucky.
Dr. Robbie Hinkebine, physical therapist as well as an athletic trainer, president of APTA Kentucky.
All right, thank you for being here. Good morning. The floor is yours.
Thank you again. We're here to talk to the committee about potential changes to our statute. This is a process that we've been looking at for 15 years now, making changes, updates, looking at different practice acts. We have not changed the statutes for physical therapy in over 30 years, aside from a small change or a addition of a compact in 2017, which was a section onto itself. So I'm going to run through the highlights quickly of what we're looking at changing within physical therapy. So some of the changes, obviously, the first one would be to streamline language. Our statutory mandate came in 58. So some of the language is still present from 1958, and things need to be updated. Things like lewd and immoral conduct is a disciplinary action. Well, that's not a legally definable statement. We have statutes and regulations for sexual misconduct, properly explaining that, removing language that's no longer legally viable, and making sure that PTs and PTAs, as well as patients in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, understand the statutes that they're underneath. The next one is adding definitions for physical therapist assistants. They are licensed by us at the moment or at the time, and they're not defined under our statutes. And this has caused some issues where insurance companies say, well, we're not going to reimburse because they're not defined under your statute. Well, they are licensed professionals within the Commonwealth of Kentucky, so adding them under the statute. Next one is adopting a process in which minor violations could be expunged. We have continuing education requirements for licensees, and if you failed to do your continuing ed in 2007, you were disciplined or you received a fine and you had to come up to compliance with your hours. That follows somebody at this point. We have no ability to wipe that from their record. That's not something, they did what they're supposed to, they came into compliance. That's not something that needs to follow them the rest of their career. Shifting responsibility for felony and misdemeanor convictions. There's a reporting responsibility in the statute. If your coworker has a felony or misdemeanor, you have to report it to the board. And if you don't, it's a violation. Well, the likelihood that you know your coworker's been convicted of felony or misdemeanor is not really high, and the reporting responsibility needs to be on the person that has been convicted of a felony and misdemeanor. So updating that. There is updates to our disciplinary actions, mainly explaining things in more in depth so that PTs and PTAs understand what is a violation and that patients understand what an appropriate physical therapy interaction should look like. There is raises to the caps on all fees and fines. As I said, this has been 30 plus years. There is no raises to fees at this time. It's just the statutory caps for them. We have not raised fees in 10 years. Before that, it was 20 plus years since the last time we raised any fees, and we have no intention of raising them for at least another 10 years. We don't need to. But while we're in there, like I said, this is the first statute change in 30 plus years. We're upping the caps because they haven't been changed since the 80s. And the last one is we have foreign educated or internationally educated physical therapists that come into the Commonwealth. And right now we have a requirement for all internationally educated physical therapists to undergo supervised practice, 3 to 6 months of supervised practice. When you're coming from a country outside the U.S. and you're taking the exam, that's important because the U.S. healthcare system is so vastly different than other healthcare systems. So coming into the U.S., it's important that you have supervised practice and everything's where it needs to be. But if you've been practicing in Indiana, let's say, for the last 20 years, supervised practice is less necessary. You've been practicing with the U.S. for a long time successfully. There's not really a need for supervised practice. So this gives the board the ability to look at that and say, okay, they've been practicing in the U.S. for 20 years. There's no need for them to have supervised practice. Let's go ahead and get them licensed in the workforce.
Thank you. Again, I'm Dr. Saxon, Chairman and Committee. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak today about a topic that I'm passionate about. I was an Army physical therapist for 5 years. I've now been a Kentucky physical therapist for 7+ years, and 7 years and counting. And I've seen firsthand in the military how direct imaging referrals by a physical therapist improves patient outcomes and prevents delays in care. I want to stress that there's no financial benefit to physical therapists to order imaging directly. We're not asking to have radiology equipment in our offices. We're not asking to perform the radiology ourselves. We're asking to be able to send patients that we identify a clinical need, something so that it's driving our clinical decision making so that we get that person to the right care as quickly as possible. And we reduce the redundancy and the delays in that treatment. We have at this point over 5 decades of evidence from the military. Military physical therapists, Army in particular, have had imaging privileges and direct access since 1972. So over 5 decades of evidence from the military that shows that we're good stewards of this privilege. And we have a growing body of research from the 7 other countries that allow physical therapists direct imaging referral privileges, as well as the 13 states here that already have approved imaging privileges to physical therapists. This evidence overwhelmingly supports physical therapists' competence in referring patients for imaging and improved patient outcomes and patient satisfaction. So reduced cost, improved efficiency, and better outcomes for these patients. Physical therapists consistently are shown to order fewer images than other providers and more closely adhere to the guidance of the American College of Radiology appropriateness criteria, which is the gold standard for the reason and the clinical judgment of why you order that imaging. Unlike our primary care counterparts who maybe have 5 minutes with their patients, we have 30 minutes to 60 minutes, depending on the setting, with our patients on that very first encounter. And we're very, very skilled at triage. You know, our number one question is, are you appropriate for physical therapy, Or do we need information, more information via imaging or other testing? Do I need to refer you somewhere else? And if we have the ability to refer for imaging right away, if there's a clinical reason for it, then the quicker we can get that information back to us, the quicker we can determine, yes, you're appropriate for physical therapy, let's drive on with our plan of care, or let's get you to the specialist that you need to make a better clinical decision and continue with the appropriate direction so that individual gets back to work or back to life or back to whatever they need as quickly as possible. We've established ourselves, physical therapists, doctorate is the standard of our education right now. We've established ourselves as the musculoskeletal experts second to orthopedic surgeons, and we have direct access in Kentucky. So other countries use that direct access more wisely than we do. We want to see Kentucky really come up to speed in that for the benefit of the patients. Thank you.
And before you start, Avery, I apologize. I apologize to the committee. I failed on my last part to serve the rest of these members up. So the last change that Dr. Saxon was talking about was the ability for physical therapists to refer patients to imaging. So this would not be the ability for physical therapists to do imaging. This would be the ability for a PT to refer a patient to another healthcare professional to do the imaging, produce a report, and then the physical therapist to utilize that report in their physical therapy practice. So not for medical diagnosis, for physical therapy plan of care creation. So it would be sending a patient to another healthcare professional to do the imaging, to create a report, and then the PT utilize that report. And I apologize.
Thanks, Steve. Dr. Schroyer again. So I want to share with you all a current patient that I have right now that we started care for low back pain, who saw their MD end of August. And all? Yeah, gladly. They came in, saw their MD at end of August for low back pain. They were given pain medication, anti-inflammatories, and a script for physical therapy. They decided to try the medication for a week and decided that wasn't working. Things seemed to be getting worse, came into my clinic. We started care. We got through a couple of visits within that first week, not progressing the way that we expected, and told them they need to get back to their doctor. This is unfortunately how this works right now because we need imaging. We need something else is going on, or at least suspect something. They were able to get back in with their doctor, but it took a week for them to get there. They're still on their pain meds. They're still on that anti-inflammatory and only progressively getting worse at this point. They finally get in there. Now they take a plain film or x-ray of them. That fortunately came back normal, but scheduled them an MRI. It took 5 days or so for pre-authorization insurance to catch up, but also once they got it scheduled, 53 days out. That patient is still waiting to this day to get that imaging report so that we can hopefully figure out who they are in best hands with. And we are doing everything we can to try and get them back up and going. We've made some improvement, but not as much as we would like or could if we could fast track that in the ability to do referral for imaging.
All right. Thank you. We'll open it up for any questions that y'all may have.
All right, thank you. Excellent presentation. I do know we have one question. Representative Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be real brief. Is this an association?
So I'm with the state licensing board, and they are with the association.
So
Yes.
there's an association that has a membership?
Yes, sir.
So do you have to be a member to practice in Kentucky?
You do not, sir.
You do not, okay. One example that I know that my family went through on physical therapy, I just come out of it, and I'm a proponent of it. I just had hip replacement, and they've done a great job, but it was a tore shoulder muscle and rotator cuff, whatever you want to call it. Before she could have surgery and have it done, they made her do physical therapy. To me, it was like getting the cart before the horse with tore muscles. You're advocating for because she couldn't, according to her insurance, she couldn't have an MRI done until she went through the steps. And the first step was physical therapy. So kudos to the association getting work in through the program, but it was actually damaging to her, if that makes any sense. And I'm sure as a doctor you can see that if you go in there doing physical therapy with already tore muscles. If she'd had the MRI first, she could have done the surgery first and then the physical therapy. Is that an issue that you're talking about, on getting the imaging done first?
So, Representative, I appreciate the question. And what I would tell you is when someone comes into our clinic, we run them through that standard triage model of whether they are appropriate for care or not. And there are times where it sounds like in this situation, they may not be appropriate for care, and they needed to be sent right back out for that imaging to get them in front of the surgeon.
You're the physical therapist. I'm
Yes,
talking
sir.
about the doctor, where she starts from. That's how insurances are set up. So I'm just giving you the real world when you go in.
So
You go through a checkoff list.
Yes, sir. So in the 13 states where imaging is allowed by physical therapists, there has not been an insurance denial or any kickback from them in those cases.
Because I can see an advantage of getting first, know what you're dealing with before you cause any more damage. That was
Yes,
my
sir.
point on that. And so how is the health coverage in your field? Do you feel like that you're involved in the right areas, just like the example I gave you, or do you have other ideas? For savings too, to tell us that we can save if we do be a little smarter about it.
Yeah. So I'd like to point out that we do have direct access in Kentucky. Your family member didn't have to go to their primary care doctor at all first. They could have gone directly to a physical therapist. Physical therapists have 36 to 40 hours of diagnostic imaging built into our doctoral programs in order to be accredited. So all accredited programs have 36 to 40 hours of diagnostic imaging, appropriateness, and just everything encompassing. It's very
and I'm
in-depth.
not saying that that's not right. I'm saying a typical person is not going to go off the street and walk into a physical therapist.
Why not?
Well, I'm saying I don't even think about if I have any issue, like when my hip was hurting, to go to a physical therapist. I went to my primary doctor, who sent me to orthopedic surgeon, and then after my surgery, they sent me to physical therapy. I'm saying coming in. I'm not saying you're wrong.
Right.
I'm just saying that, and again, I'll close it, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make the point that I think that our system can be ran better and more efficient by having a better checkoff list on getting the diagnosis and getting it done without going through your bill's this long when you get it, on everybody making
Right.
sure they got their part of it.
Yes, sir. And what I would tell you is there is data out there that shows if folks get to physical therapy quicker, we save medication costs, opioid use. We also save on imaging costs. So there's not an overutilization, and there is a more efficient care. Also, quicker return to work because they're actually getting the care that they need, or they're getting to the right specialists that they need to faster.
And
Another
I think,
reason-
excuse me, I think what you could bring to the committee is something that makes sense. And then the committee can make, if I'm correct, Mr. Chairman, that's all I'm saying.
Thank
If you can help us find a way to eliminate a lot of this pre-stuff, that we can get right directly to the issue, and that may save a page of bills before they get there. That's all that I'm saying. But I appreciate your time. I know we're
And it's a little bit, just to kind of wrap that up, it's a lot to do with insurance, which is not really on the table today.
Yeah, and
I know
Rep, if
Representative
you-
Moser would love to, and hits that.
As a regulator, if you
Health
can
and
tell me
welfare
how
all
to
the time.
force insurance to do something, I'd love to.
So let's
that-
before we go down a rabbit hole, let's go to Senator Higdon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And a quick question about talk about fees that are in statute. What type of fees are for PTs are etched in stone in statute?
So there's no actual fees in statute. There's only fee caps. So things like application fees, you can charge up to this amount, are in the statutes. The actual fees are in regulation. So our current application fee would be in regulation. So these are upping the caps, not any fees. The caps, as I said, have not been raised in quite a long time. So yeah.
Why wouldn't you put the caps and change it to where you do the caps by administrative reg also?
I'd be happy to do that, so I don't have to come back for statutes. I mean, that's not something we're necessarily against. It's just currently it's been in the statute since '58, and that's just we kind of play with what we were given. So
and Senator Higdon's right. There's a let's get together on that, and we need to get a bill sponsor. I think we've done 13 or 14 different boards have redone their caps, and there's 2 or 3 different advised ways to do that, so you don't have to come back to this committee to do that every time. So let's look at that and go from there. You're right, Senator Higdon. Senator Douglas.
I was going to say that we have administrative regs. If you get out of line, they'll smack your hand. Okay, so we're not overly concerned.
Dr. Douglas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 2 questions, if I may, and I'll ask them both very quickly. When we talk about the times that there is no imaging and speeding imaging up would be helpful. But again, just for this committee, a lot of that protocol is set by the insurance company. And the insurance company will not honor a prescription from a physical therapy anymore. It's going to honor a prescription from me in terms of the timeliness. That's a big deal. But saying that, can you give us an estimate of the percentage of time that you get someone who is referred to you who does not have imaging versus those who are self-referrals, that is, walking off the street for physical therapy, who don't have imaging?
I don't know if there's any data out there in regards to ones that are referred versus a direct access patient that comes in. To answer your question, we can certainly look into that. We do know from the studies, and there's a big study that's coming out in 3 states that currently have imaging within their practice act, that the utilization for physical therapists through orders is anywhere from 1% to 3%, to where in the primary care space it's around 12%. So the utilization of imaging is significantly less in the PT space as it is in the primary care space to order imaging.
I'm not sure what that means. I'm sorry.
So I guess I don't know if your question was in regards to utilization. Maybe I misunderstood it.
Well, one of the reasons that the therapist wants to be able to do this is to speed up the matriculation through the healthcare process.
Correct.
Is hopefully what I'm hearing here.
Yeah, save costs, improve.
And one of the biggest barriers to matriculation through the healthcare process is not imaging. It's getting approval for the imaging. That doesn't matter who writes the prescription. It is getting approval for those.
100%.
And so,
I think there's another component of that, though, is you have to look at the steps, as Avery kind of pointed out. So once it was recognized that he needed further imaging for his patient, it took a week to get into primary care. Then it took another week to get into more specialty films, right? So there's a delay in care as it goes to one provider to the other to actually order that beyond the insurance.
I understand that. I understand that. I guess my point is that we're really talking about convenience is what we're talking about in the long run. And many of these are patients who are self-referrals. And so, Mr. Chairman, I agree. I think there's a lot more investigation that kind of needs to be done and movement around a bill that would handle some of these questions that we're bringing up today before we can really say a whole lot. So, but no, that's all I had to ask. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Douglas, if I can address that, Chairman?
Yes.
I think that the more important question, this is not a matter of convenience to the patient. This is much more a matter of appropriateness. We don't order images for the purpose of diagnosis. Your family practice physician may order an image thinking that they're doing the right thing for you. For example, back pain, okay? So anyone over the age of 40, every single person, 100% of the population, if I MRI your back, if I order an MRI for your back, that is going to come back with results showing disc degeneration and probably some other changes. Whether you have back pain or not, 100% of the population shows these changes on the imaging. So that has to be married up with a clinical exam. That has to be married up with the real person in front of you. That's where we come in. We have the time to look at the full person, to dig into the medical history, to put our hands on that patient and find out, okay, does that image correlate with the real person in front of me? There's a drastic overutilization of imaging and identification of normal abnormals, like gray hairs on the inside, that may have nothing to do with that patient's symptoms and pain. So if we can see them first, then we can help to address the things that are appropriately managed with conservative care and don't need that additional expensive and timely care. Alternative contrast to that, if you have that imaging and it shows something, patients tend to latch onto that diagnosis and they hang their hat on it, and that makes our job as physical therapists much more challenging, because your pain may be muscular, or it may have something that's absolutely nothing to do with the disc degeneration that showed up on that imaging. That's where our clinical expertise comes in with the direct access and appropriateness of care.
All right, thank you. We're going to do one final question from Representative Callaway.
Thank you, Chairman. So what I'm hearing, and Representative Smith actually touched on some of my concerns, what I'm hearing is we're talking about diagnosis, which you're talking about appropriateness, diagnosis and condition, that kind of thing following up. But after surgery, that's something different. They've already been assigned a doctor, and they going through physical therapy, hopefully recovering and getting usage of whatever appendage, whatever's happened. And if that doctor, so if I go through physical therapy and in the middle of that, I'm having some pain, and, physical therapy, you guys are recognizing that and saying something to my doctor. My doctor's like, no, she needs to finish physical therapy and then we'll re-examine and all that. So I foresee kind of a conflict to say, well, you guys think there's something else going on in requesting an image to see what's happening, if there's an additional condition happening, or if it would be continued physical therapy would be best, versus the doctor saying, no, she's going to finish this regimen and then we'll re-examine and all that. So I feel like there may be a conflict there. I think insurance is an issue. I do think there's a lot more research to be done. I like that the conversation is happening so that we do get appropriate care for individuals, and I appreciate the information. But I do think we need to approach it two different ways. You're talking about, after surgery, there's that physical therapy versus just the initial diagnosis before they've even been in front of a doctor and that kind of thing. So I would like to hear more about this and have conversations. I have a personal experience about it. I won't share today, but I do have something that I have in mind, which is why I'm asking. So thank you all. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Let's, I think you guys need to get a bill sponsor, start working through a draft, and let's start to get, I think there's a lot of conversations that need to happen with some of that. So let's,
Excellent.
I'm glad we started it today, got the ball rolling.
Thank you, Chairman.
So find a bill sponsor and let's keep it moving.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Okay, we're going to go a little bit out of order today. We're going to go with, I know everybody's waiting for this one, freestanding birth centers. Representative Nemes, is this the year? Yes, sir. If you all sit at the table, make sure your green light's on. Introduce yourselves for the record. I know you know the drill, and we'll get moving.
We do. Thank you. Ladies first.
Mary Catherine DeLoder, Kentucky Birth Coalition.
Shelley Punky Promeyer, State Senator, Northern Kentucky.
Jason Nemes, Representative 33rd District. That's Jefferson, Oldham, and Shelby counties.
Mark Wilson, partner at Top Shelf Lobby.
At the table together.
That's
We're
it.
all
right. You're right. That's right. What we've been waiting for. Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you for what you've done on this bill. Also want to thank the former chair of this committee who's here today, Representative Koenig, who also worked on this bill when he was in the General Assembly. And I think it's come to this, brought it to this place where it's good. It's a better bill than it's been, and it's ready to roll. I want to say, if I could, the 6 changes that we've made, the improvements that we've made over the last year or so, and then we'll answer any questions. I also want to thank off the top Kentucky Hospital Association, a number of their members, including St. Elizabeth's, who's taken this bill very seriously. and I think has made some improvements that will lead to its passage this year, hopefully. The very first thing in Section 1.2 sub A of the bill, we have included Commission for the Accreditation of Birth Centers accreditation standards, which is consistent with the ACOG levels of maternal care. We also have at Section 1.2 sub B of the bill, malpractice insurance for the facility. At Section 1.2 sub C of the bill, we have it requires a proximity to a hospital. At Section 1.3 of the bill, it requires a medical director who is a licensed physician, Dr. Douglas. And I hope you know where you're sitting, right in front of all the Bullitt County people, so be careful over there. But that's in Section 1.3 of the bill. I'll put your attention to that. We have informed consent that's laid out in Section 1 sub 4 of the bill. And then we have transfer agreements with the hospital in Sections 1.5 and 1.6 of the bill. Those are improvements that have been made. Some of them we thought we had in the bill, but we wanted to expressly put them in the bill at the request of our friends. And so I want to turn it over to Mr. Wilson, and then I think Senator Funky Fromeyer has something she wants to say, and we'll answer any questions.
Thank you, Representative Nemes. Again, my name is Mark Wilson. I'm happy to be here at the table today for our client, St. Elizabeth Healthcare, and their 11,000 physicians and team members that work at St. Elizabeth. I'm here today to thank Representative Nemes for listening and hearing our concerns over the past 4 years. He's been working on this measure, and I'm happy to report that St. Elizabeth Healthcare is neutral on this legislation as presented to us in the most recent draft. And thank you for allowing us to have a voice. I had to read that statement because I've been told if I misspeak that world markets will crash. So thank you for allowing me to be here today, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Representative Nemes.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
I, too, want to thank St. Elizabeth. They, in fact, hosted a number of gatherings of stakeholders to this issue, including our nurse practitioners that are midwives and professional midwives, as well as some doulas. So we were able to bring so many stakeholders to the table that represent the mothers that are looking for that wellness revolution. And we do believe that expanding the opportunity that, by the way, it's also stated in the bill, that a hospital can also own a birthing center. And we feel like that was some of the last feedback that we received from St. Elizabeth, and we really appreciate that because we hosted a number of legislators to the Tree of Life Birthing Center in Indiana. And that was some of the feedback that we received. And of course, that's been addressed in this bill. Hospitals can own a birthing center. So all in all, thank you for giving us the 6th year in a row opportunity to present this. And I think we've done a great job. And thanks again.
Thank you all very much. Are there any questions or comments from the committee? All right. So, Dr. Douglas.
Well, Mr. Chairman, only because my name was called out of turn.
I knew I should have done it.
Called out. I understand. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. I was.
I knew I should have done it.
Thank you very much.
You have a right to defend yourself.
May I ask 2 questions, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The one, the medical director. I'm looking for their qualifications. Is the medical director going to be an obstetrician? Because I see it says a physician, and then I'm reading the bill and I'm trying to find out what qualifications are required of that particular physician. Well, I say this because I don't want my family practice doctor removing my gallbladder.
Well, no gallbladders will be removed at birth centers, so that's not a concern. But a family practice physician could have obstetrics, and we do have in their purview, and we do have family practice physicians in the state who are catching babies in hospital settings. So there are other specialties that could absolutely serve as a medical director for a birth center. Other states have.
Well, I'm sorry because I know time is an issue, and everyone knows I go down particular trails and want to go down those trails. My question was, what are the criteria set forth in the bill of the requirements of the physician? I know what physicians do.
That is not addressed currently in the bill. It's left to the regulations, which is currently where that is addressed in the current existing birth center regulations as well.
And if I
Okay.
could, Mr. Chairman, that this is consistent with what I understand Indiana law to be, which is one of the ones that I looked at most closely. And also, it's also, I think, covered in a tangential way at Section 1.2 sub E of the bill, which says any other requirements that the cabinet believes is necessary.
Okay. May I ask my second question, Mr. Chairman? Liability limits. Could you verbalize those, please?
Yeah, I think it would be improper to require reliability limits in statute. I think that could be done. It should be done, either in regulation or perhaps on the market. I know it's not required, particular liability limits for lawyers, for example, and I don't think so for physicians either. But it is required that they get it. It could be spelled out in regulation and certainly in the market.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right. Thank you all. Good presentation. Good to see you sitting together.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. For our final presentation today, welcome back former Representative Adam Koenig, who's in his new role with the quarter horse industry in Kentucky. And Representative Dixon. And I believe you have a few guests out in the audience you might want to introduce as well, so I'll let you do that.
We do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Park from the Racing and Gaming Corporation and Drew Connors are both here to support these requests we're going to make.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jonathan Dixon, District 11, and I will let Mr. Koenig proceed.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. We have a bill that we will like to put forth next year. It does two simple things, which is, first of all, create a new section of the statute for quarter horse racing in particular. We are currently lumped in the same area as Appaloosas, Paint, and Arabian, which I'm sure made sense in 2005, Senator Thayer, when you wrote it, 2004, mere 20 years, and has served us well. But now that we are fortunate enough to have a license and are going to have a track here soon, we're going to it'd probably be best that we separate those out so that when we need specific changes, it is specific to us rather than all those other breeds. And secondly, we would like to change the definition of Kentucky bred for, I believe, the current working plan is 3 years, in order to increase the amount of mares that come here, increase the amount of Kentucky breds, so that we can build a program that hopefully one day will match our standard bred. I don't know if we'll ever get to the thoroughbred, but it'll be a good goal for us to have. Currently, I believe, according to Mr. Connors, we have 50 registered Kentucky bred quarter horses, and that is mares, horses of racing age, weanlings, everything. Only 50. So we're got one direction to go. That's up, and if we can pass this, that will help us to do that.
I'd just like to add to that there are, as you look around at other states that are neighboring us, the quarter horse racing industry has really exploded in those states, and Kentucky is prime for that same type of result here. It's just a few little changes that we need to be competitive. There are a lot of breeders that are out there that those type of incentives would help them bring quarter horses here to Kentucky. I myself have invested some money in building a facility here in Kentucky just for the purpose of raising quarter horses and foaling them here in Kentucky. But with a few little tweaks, I wouldn't be the only one. There are many others already, but you would see additional people jump into that with a little bit of incentive and of course, hopefully in the end, bring a lot of quarter horses to Kentucky to take part in our race.
That's right. I know otherwise we're standing between you all and being done with this meeting, so.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank Commissioner Park for being here. I know she's been working this very closely. She's a well-known thoroughbred breeder, and she's taken a lot of interest in the quarter horse industry and wants to see it grow. She believes rising tide lifts all ships, and she's been instrumental in coming up with this and helping this plan. So you could go, for instance, you could go to the Heritage Sale and buy a pregnant broodmare, bring her back to Kentucky, and allow that foal here and breed the mare back and allow that to become a Kentucky bred and help increase the program. I've got one question before I turn it over to Senator Thayer, and that's how's the track going? How's track construction?
My understanding is it has begun, and I will be there tomorrow, and I will lay eyes on it myself. And I do want to, since you set that up, I want to take the opportunity to thank the efforts of not just the track operator, but the Racing and Gaming Commission from Chairman Rabinowitz throughout everyone else I've talked to on the commission, and Executive Director Eads, who have been steadfast in making sure that happened and making sure that it stays in Ashland.
Senator Thayer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I'm going to start with the track. I see that the owners of the track are not present at the meeting today, and I would like to make sure that a message is delivered that they're way behind schedule from where they promised, both the legislature and the Horse Racing and Gaming Corporation. And I did see photos of the groundbreaking, but I would like to hear from you after you lay eyes on it to make sure that we just didn't see a picture of an excavator and a chainsaw taking down trees for a photo op, and that they are actually doing work down there. Because if they don't get that track up and running a race meet by 2026, I think they're going to have some problems.
And that is the plan.
Yeah, I mean they're going to run the quarter horse meet for the third consecutive year at the Red Mile, and the Red Mile does a great job. I've been out, seen you there.
Yes, you have.
Both times. I'll be there again this year, maybe more because I won't have to be here as much. But you know, the whole reason they have an HHR license in Ashland is so they can build a quarter horse track, and they need to get on it because I'm going to continue to be watching closely from wherever it is I sit after January 1. So please deliver that message.
Yes, sir.
Now, back to your proposed legislation, a little history lesson for our members here. I'm the author of the original Kentucky Breeders' Incentive legislation that repurposes the sales tax on stud fees into an incentive program for people to bring their mares to Kentucky, breed them to Kentucky stallions, and leave them here to foal out. It is a tremendous economic impact, and the program has worked very well. I see Commissioner Park. She's a constituent of mine. Her farm is in Scott County. She worked with me on that legislation. It was included in then Governor Ernie Fletcher's tax modernization plan. At that time, Kentucky was actually losing market share on the thoroughbred side, and the standardbred side was basically dead in the water, and there was no quarter horse industry. Now, on the thoroughbred side, not only do we lead in the market share, we continue to grow year after year. More and more people are bringing their mares here and from those other states that we were leaking to 20 years ago. So it's worked really well. I can assure you that the original language that included Appaloosas and Arabians was there to deal with simulcasting, the all-breed simulcasting, the multi-breed simulcasting approach. And in the event that Appaloosa or Arabian racing ever came to Kentucky, they were covered. That's not going to be the case. Quarter horses are moving forward, and I certainly think that part of your statutory change is in line with necessity. The chairman called me last week to bring me up to date on your legislation. As you might understand, as someone who authored the legislation and worked really hard to get it passed and is really proud of its results, I'm going to be a little sensitive when somebody wants to change it. But there is precedent for it. We changed the standardbred side of things about 10 years in because we weren't getting the stallions here. And without getting too much into the artificial insemination world versus the natural cover world, thoroughbreds are required to do natural cover. If you want me to explain that off camera later, I'm happy to do so. I'm not going to do it here right now. Standardbreds and quarter horses are allowed to do artificial insemination, which means the stallion can stand in another state, the semen can be shipped here, the mare can be impregnated. And so we changed that rule. And it is, as Drew Connors will tell you, who now runs the Breeders' Incentive Program, how many standardbred mares do we have in Kentucky now?
Oh, God. We had, just for reference, we had 1,276 yearlings registered.
1,276 yearlings registered in the program. And before we changed that law, there were probably 50 or 100. 50 or 60. So sort of where the quarter horse industry is now. Everyone on this committee who's listened to me talk about this over the years knows that every horse that comes to Kentucky is a factory, whether it's a stallion or a mare. They create jobs. It has a huge trickle-down effect. And I appreciate the creative approach that you're looking to do here to try to get quarter horse mares into Kentucky. There is a fairly significant sum of money that Drew is overseeing for Kentucky-bred quarter horses to supplement purses, much like we do on the thoroughbred side with the KTDF program that Chauncey Morris from the KTA administers. And right now we can't give that money away because there are no registered Kentucky breds because people haven't bred horses in Kentucky on the quarter horse side for 15 years because there's been no place to earn the money. Now we have a place to earn the money, and we need to give people an opportunity to participate in that. So I'm supportive of that, but I do want to see the details of the legislation. Since it's my legislation you're changing, I would like to see the language before you move forward. The chairman did tell me that you had a sunset provision on the law. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think we're not going to leave it open-ended. We were talking about it 3 years to allow have a mare and foal, bring them here. And then hopefully at some point, enough of them want to stay that that will sunset. And if for some reason 3 years from now, it's not having the desired effect, we can revisit it then. But we're confident that we'll have a pretty good chance of, once we have the track, the HHR facility is up and running. Hopefully there'll be a second one up and running before long. And we'll have the ability to have purses, probably Kentucky bred like the standard breds do, Kentucky bred races, and it'll be worthwhile, and people will come without come and stay, and without having to incentivize them in any other way.
And the big thing to watch, I'll add to that, will be what happens with the stallion situation with the quarter horses.
Right.
And that's something we're going to have to watch and see. It's like you're talking about with artificial insemination. So we'll be watching to see what happens with our quarter horse stallions. I'm quite confident that this is going to allow us to bring in a good base of mares in the next 3 years. And that'll be fantastic, and then we'll have to address and see where we are with the stallions.
Yeah, the long-term play, Mr. Chairman, if I may, the long-term play is obviously it would be great if we had 15, 20, 30 quarter horse stallions move to Kentucky in the next 3 to 5 years to take advantage of this. Short-term, what you're trying to do is to get mares here. Mm-hmm. And that is an admirable goal because the minute a mare comes here, she has to be boarded somewhere, she has to be fed, she has to be vetted, she has to be blacksmithed, et cetera. That takes people, that takes money, that creates job, that trickles down into the economy. I support that. I would like to see a sunset provision on it to see if the stallions follow the mares. Mm-hmm. They usually do. That's why they have ladies' nights at bars. Thank you. I'm glad you all got that. So I would like to see the details, but I think you're onto something, and I think it's a really good idea. And I hope the members of this committee support it, and I'll do what I can. If the language is agreeable and along with the original legislative intent from 20 years ago, I think it's a really good idea, and I plan to support it from wherever it is I sit after January 1.
Thank you.
Representative Palumbo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My friend Adam, I'm just sorry I won't be here to vote for your bill.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it, Representative Palumbo.
And Representative Smith.
I'll be brief, Mr. Chairman. To kind of clarify the breeding, a thoroughbred can be bred crossed with a quarter horse for racing. What time frame or how many, I guess, is it the second breed that makes it eligible, or how can you take a thoroughbred, mix with a quarter horse, and then race? What generation? Does it take 2 times to get it, or the first time?
I'm going to yield to the chairman.
I believe that's a first time.
First time, okay. The second point that I want to make, because that's important we have plenty of inventory in thoroughbred. So people need to know that they can crossbreed and race. I mean, that's good education, I guess is what I'm saying, Mr. Chairman. Second part is, I think that for this to be successful in quarter horses, it's we've had quarter horses in our area for years, but it's mostly barrel racers, show for show, and I think that's still going to be out there, but we can enhance, as the leader said from the Senate, Mr. Thayer, on the growth of it. I think that it's going to be expanding still have the use for it, other uses besides racing, since we're limited to one track. My thoughts is, and I will leave it at this, it would be good if we could get with the Racing Commission and find maybe 5 regions or 4 regions to hold meets and to expand it across the state for future use, for future racing. I don't think it would interfere. I know parimutuel might, but I'm talking about its own breed, because we've done that with standard bred. We have standard bred tracks around. We may not have to open additional tracks. We may be able to utilize like they do at Red Mile, but spread the meets across the state to enhance the inventory, to enhance the participation in purchasing and racing. That's just my thoughts on it on the growth anyway.
I look forward to getting to the point where we have so much money and so many horses that we have that conversation.
All right. No further questions or comments. Meeting's adjourned.